What is up, you guys? It's your buddy Upshall, and today I wanted to address a question I've been seeing in the Battlefield community. I've seen this on Reddit, I've seen it on Twitch, and a lot of streams people are asking this question. I've seen it on Twitter being discussed actually by the DICE developers themselves, and that is, do you guys think that there should be all-class weapons in Battlefield 1? And this is a bit of a tricky question, and it's kind of a reasonable question for people to be asking, because all-class weapons are not going to be a new thing if they were to arrive in the game. They've been in Battlefield 3 in the form of PDWs. We had them in Battlefield 4 in two forms. We had them as DMRs, and we also had them as carbines. So I really wanted to address it today. A lot of people have been making some good recommendations for how they could implement all-class weapons, but I'm not so sure that they really should even try. A lot of that has got to do with the fact that DICE has really gone for that rock, paper, scissors design in this Battlefield. All of the guns really do have specific combat ranges that they will excel at. If you're playing the Assault class, you're going to have some pretty tight corners PDW action. If you're playing as a medic, you can expect to excel at a mid to long range. If you're playing support, well, you're kind of just an all-out GAT, but you're still not going to be as good as those Assault guys close quarters. And then your recon, your scout class, that's obviously going to be something that's pushing the longer ranges. And I do like this design. It definitely feels like when you're playing Battlefield 1, you're kind of more so assigned to a role. Unless you're using the M1911, which I'm doing in that clip, and that thing is dank. And you can use that whenever you want, because it wrecks face. Now, the problem you introduce when you do have all-class weapons, no matter whether or not they're actually underpowered or they're overpowered, you run into this problem of kind of blending all the classes and reducing this rock paper scissors design that I think, and I think a lot of other people think, is what makes Battlefield so good and so fun to play. And basically what will happen is, let's just use the example from Battlefield 4, where all classes could use the carbine. Well, that ended up being the case in which a lot of the classes, pretty much all the classes, would be using the carbine. So, with the exception of probably the Assault class, which was the medic class now in Battlefield 1. So what happened in Battlefield 4 is engineers would kind of have class-specific PDWs, the support class would have the class-specific LMGs, the snipers would have the snipers, you kind of get where I'm going with this. But all of them would have the opportunity to run the carbines, and the carbines were great medium to short range, kind of all around really good guns, really solid. You're never going to go wrong with them. And while the support class did have the LMGs, and they were arguably better, albeit a little bit harder to use, a lot of people still would use carbines, and it's kind of tricky here, right? Because you had these, if you wanted to run an engineer and you wanted to just kind of wreck the tanks, then you would run a carbine, and you would run your engineer, and you'd run an RPG. If you wanted to play support and be able to give yourself ammo, but still kind of maintain that snappy, close quarters combat feel, you'd run a carbine. If you were playing sniper, and you really wanted to have a spawn beacon, if say you were playing rush mode, where you wanted to push an objective, and if you happen to die, or if your squad mates happen to die, you wanted to ensure they didn't have to run a great distance, and that they could be just on the point and ready to go. You might switch to the recon class, but then switch to a carbine, so now you can again exceed in close and medium range combat. And that is the problem with all class weapons. It ends up kind of blending the game too much. If there's something that is even any bit really usable for all the classes, people will sort of gravitate towards it. And the one thing about this is that what people have been recommending as being an all-class weapon is a form of sniper that has no sights. So it would basically be a bolt action. Think of the bolt action you get when you're on the cavalry class. If you hadn't to play the Battlefield 1 beta, whenever you spawned on a horse, you spawned in with this pretty standard Russian 1895, I think is what it was. Pretty standard sniper rifle that had its iron sights, a 5-round magazine. It was pretty good. It was pretty solid. So something like that could be all class. And it's a cool idea, because I know that World War I was mainly fought with iron sights and bolt actions. It wasn't really fought with a lot of the weaponry we see in the game, while some of the automaticos and some of those high rate of fire weapons were technically in probably prototype form during World War I, and I'm sure somebody stepped up onto a battlefield in World War I with an automatic rifle. they really were not seen at all. Like, it really is not a completely historically accurate thing, although I get why it's in there for game design and the fun factor. It's definitely not a realistic thing in World War I, so I can kind of see why people want to have this bolt action all-class thing. Now, the issue that I have with this, the big issue, and we definitely got a good example of this in the Battlefield 1 beta, is that everybody, no matter what happened anyways, a lot of people were gravitating to bolt action rifles. If you look at the Battlefield beta stats, you'll see that 28% of people were actually running the Scout class anyways, with the only being beaten out by the Assault class at 30%, and I think most of this has got to do with the fact that people were very frustrated getting rolled over by tanks, which is kind of expected. So therefore they were running the Assault class so they could get a little bit more anti-tank weaponry. And it's funny because the Assault class really didn't have that good of anti-tank weaponry until you actually ranked it up, which probably took a significant amount of playtime. It probably took maybe 5 hours to rank up your Assault class so you could get an anti-tank rocket gun that could actually do reasonable damage to tanks and not get you completely smashed whenever you try to run up on one. But I think that if they did have a bolt-action rifle, I think you'd probably see about 60% of people over the player base running the Assault class. Now, Lars Gustafsson from BF1 Development from DICE has confirmed that all class weapons will not be in the game, at least not at launch, which kind of indicates that they are going to consider including some form of all-class weapons. Whether or not they might arrive as DLC or just a general update is that's something that's uncertain, but it's nice to know that they're considering it, albeit I don't know if it's something that should be implemented in the game. Just because I think that if something like bolt actions were made as an all-class weapon, be it that they may not have scopes equipable, I just feel like that would be overpowered. Not to mention, it would kind of eradicate the purpose of the the Scout class. I feel like if all you're going to lose out on is the ability to scope in on people while you can also run around with an AT rocket gun, to me that would be pretty much the only thing I would ever pick in the game. Maybe they would introduce some form of bolt action that doesn't do quite as much damage. I still just feel like that would be pointless in itself as well. I'm not entirely sure, guys, but I don't really feel like they need to put in all class weapons because, to me, I think that DICE has nailed the rock, paper, scissors design. I do think there might need to be a little bit more weapon tweaking and a little bit more balancing to really get it nailed, but I think the game is, especially for a beta and during the alpha even, I think the game was in a good spot with a design standpoint and a balance standpoint between classes. But let me know what you guys think. I'm definitely interested in hearing your guys' opinions, whether or not you agree with me, or whether or not you oppose me. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, it's appreciated, guys. Thanks for watching. I apologize for being away for a week. I just had to wait on getting a new computer to do some editing. But thanks for watching. Subscribe if you liked it, and I'll catch you guys soon.